Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Flynn and I am the owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique. And today we're going to be doing kind of a fun video. This design was inspired by a watch that I saw on Pinterest and I just thought it was so cute. I had to have it on a tumbler. So this is my interpretation of that design. I hope you guys enjoy this video. You know we're going to have all the products that you see listed and linked down below in the description box. You might even find some discount codes for you there as well. Now another thing you're going to find down there is links to all of our social media, you guys. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Our Facebook group also is a great place for you guys to get some help with my tutorials and connect with other people in our community. So that's definitely enough chit chat for me. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, you guys, so as usual, I'm starting with a fully prepped and sanded cup. I'm using a 20-ounce skinny straight from Craft Haven today, and I've already spray painted it this heirloom white, which is just the perfect like ivory cream color for the project that we're working on today. And as soon as my spray paint was dry to the touch, we were ready to go. I did use a space heater to help speed that process along. I've got 20 milliliters of epoxy already mixed, and I'm going to add in just enough glitter to cover the top of my epoxy here. So this is Chantilly from Peachy Olive Glitters, and we're going to mix all this glitter into our epoxy. You could use any kind of white glitter for this type of project. I just would recommend using a finer cut glitter, so like a 0.008 cut glitter or something like that. It turns out better and less patchy if you have really fine glitter, and you also don't want to add too much glitter or too little. All right, but I will go over later how to fix it if your glitter turns out patchy. All right, so we're just going to mix this up really well. Make sure that glitter is evenly distributed through your epoxy, and then we're just going to spread this on like we would any other epoxy coat, trying to make sure that we've got even coverage of our glitter all over the cup. I am using a fast set epoxy. I'm using Alumilite's Amazing Quick Coat. So I'm going to let this dry for about 2 hours. And after 2 hours, I noticed that my glitter was patchy. So I literally just repeated this same process twice. So I basically did 2 epoxy glitter coats to get the look that I was after, and it turned out perfect. So after that second coat, I did let it dry for at least 4 hours before we moved on to our next step. All right, and so here is what we are left with. Again, if you're using a different kind of epoxy, your dry time will vary, but I'm using Alumilite's Quick Coat, so I'm ready to do decals after just about the 6-hour mark. And I do have the 2 coats of the glittered epoxy to get those results, because the first time I did it, my glitter was patchy. All right, so moving on, we're going to go over how to do the vinyl section through the center. So I first want to measure and see what kind of length of vinyl that I want to put through that center. Since my cup is 8 inches tall, I decided that a 4-inch strip through the center would look the best. You may decide that you want it a little more, a little less, but I thought 4 inches looked great because I have 2 inches of glitter on the top and 2 inches of glitter on the bottom. So you still get to see all of that pretty ivory glitter, but we're also going to feature this beautiful leopard print stripe through the center. All right, so I'm just kind of measuring here to get a feel for how I want it. Once I know how wide I want that center strip of vinyl to be, I'm going to trim it with my paper trimmer. I'm going to first trim off all this like excess white edge along my vinyl. This is printed vinyl, so I purchased it like this. It was pre-printed. There's a million patterns to choose from. I got this from, I think I got this one from Zindy's. I usually get my patterns from thevinylcottageshop.com. I'll have links for where you guys can find the best patterned vinyl down below in the description box. But anyway, what we want to do is we want to cut a strip that's 4 inches wide by 12 inches long, and we're going to position that on our cup and try and center it. So I'm going to use my ruler to help me measure the 2 inches from the top and the 2 inches from the bottom, because again, my cup is 8 inches long and I'm using a 4-inch strip of vinyl. So that means I have 4 inches left to work with, and I've divided those up so that we have even amounts on the top and the bottom. So I've just marked those spots there with some masking tape, and I'm going to line up my vinyl along those 2 marked spots of the tape. And I want to try and get my vinyl as straight on the cup as possible. And I'm going to kind of do like a practice run on wrapping the cup to make sure that I can meet those ends properly end to end. So lining up with my tape lines that I added there earlier, I'm just lining up the vinyl, wrapping it around, making sure everything comes together right. And then once I've got a good idea of how everything's going to go, and I know for sure that those edges are going to meet properly, and then I have 2 inches on top and 2 inches on bottom, I'm going to use those same little pieces of tape, and I'm going to tape down that edge of vinyl right there just to kind of anchor it down and help us keep everything straight. So now that I have that edge anchored down, I'm going to start the wrap. So I'm just going to peel back the very edge here just a tiny bit. We're just going to peel off a little bit of that paper backing at a time, less than an inch here that we've peeled back. And we're just going to anchor down our first section of vinyl there, and make sure you try to get it down as smooth as possible using your thumb to kind of squeegee out any kind of bubbles. Yes, this is a little bit tricky, but I promise you it's easier than doing a full wrap. All right. So we're just going to continue along the cup like that, and using my thumb, I am going to just kind of smooth things down. You can also use your vinyl scraper as well, but I just find with this particular style of design, it was easier to use my hand to smooth things out. And we're going to leave that paper backing on as long as we can, and just smooth down one section of at a time, taking our time all the way around the cup. All right, and then once we get to the end here, I'm just gonna overlap the top and the bottom. See, we've got this excess here. We're just gonna overlap it and press down against our seam. And then we'll trim off the excess just right next to the seam. I don't want them to really try to come together just because I have a hard time cutting it straight. So I just cut it right next to the seam just in case I don't actually cut off too much and then expose the underneath side. So I just kind of cut like 1/8 of an inch to the right of where the 2 pieces of vinyl meet, if that makes sense. All right, so cutting as straight as we can, as careful as we can. And then I'll just pull off that excess amount of vinyl and save it for our other project. All right, and next I'm going to show you guys how to make the matching keychain. I've got a 3-inch circle acrylic blank that I got from Wood Elf Crafting. I will have their website linked down below. They have great prices on acrylic blanks. And I'm just going to peel off one side of the paper backing on this shape here, and we're going to sand it really quick, just enough to scuff up the surface. This is just a like 80 grit sanding block, and then I'm going to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol to clean it up, and this is so that our epoxy and everything adheres really well. Next, I'm going to tape my acrylic blank to the top or the bottom of a medicine cup with the like right side up. And then we're going to spray paint it with that same heirloom white just to give it kind of a base color, because the glitter that I'm going to use really does need a nice base color to get that good creamy like ivory white. Anyway, next I'm going to go back to the tumbler we were working on. I want to put a coat of epoxy over that vinyl section first before I add our gold details, just because I don't want you to see any seams coming up through the gold vinyl that we're going to be using later on to do our detailed lines. You can decide to skip this step if you want to try and line your vinyl lines up directly up next to that vinyl so you don't see any seams, but I just would rather not. Anyway, I'm going to take some of that epoxy that I had left over from epoxying that tumbler, and I'm going to mix some glitter into it and use that on our keychain. So really, these are two projects that you guys could be working on at the same time. This is fast setting epoxy, so I can get both done pretty quickly. I'm going to mix in enough glitter to cover up the top, and I'm going to mix it all in and then coat our acrylic blank. You want to spread this on just like you would frost like a cookie, and I'm spreading it on with the same little metal stir stick that I'm using to mix the epoxy with. I'll have them all linked down in the description box if you want to get these too. I love these. I just have my blank taped to a piece of cardboard to help me maneuver it. And then once I've got all the glitter and epoxy mixture spread on here, I'm going to put it on a level surface to dry for about 4 hours. My cup's going to dry for at least 4 hours as well before we move on to more decals. All right, I also wanted to show you guys how I edited the file for the keychain. So I just have a 3-inch circle pulled up in Cricut Design Space. Because our keychain blank is 3 inches, we can just use a generic 3-inch circle in Cricut Design Space. Then I'm going to pull up a square shape, and I'm going to unlock the proportions and resize it to the desired width of the leopard print that I want to go through the center of my circle, and I'm going to center it with both the circle and the square selected. Then with both the circle and square selected still, I'm going to slice them so that I'm left with this perfectly sized strip here that has the rounded edges. That is what I want. Then I'm going to duplicate the same bee that I had pulled up for my tumbler. If you guys want a link to where I got this bee, I will have it down below in the description box. And I'm just going to change the color of the bee here so I can see it in relation to the strip and size it appropriately so it looks good. I think I ended up doing this one just over 1 inch. And then I'm going to pull up another square, unlock the proportions, and then I'm going to resize it to 11.5 inches by 0.10 inches. And that will be the size of the vinyl stripe that I will put on the top and bottom of that little strip of leopard that we're going to be doing on the keychain. You'll see how it all comes together in the end, but mainly I just wanted to show you guys how easy it was to edit the images and shapes for this keychain. The bee and this vinyl stripes that you see above are what I created for the tumbler, and the vinyl stripes that I'm putting on my tumbler are 11.5 inches wide by 0.20 inches tall, and I want to say the bee was just over 2 inches in size for the tumbler. Okay, so next we're just going to weed our vinyl and put them on our cup and our keychain. So anyway, if you guys are struggling with cutting and weeding this textured vinyl, you're not alone. It was super difficult. I selected the premium textured vinyl option in my custom blade settings on my Cricut Design Space when I went to cut this, and then I also cut it with more pressure. So use the premium textured vinyl option, then select more pressure from the drop down. For the tumbler, I'm just going to apply my vinyl stripes like I always do. I just kind of eyeball it, pulling the strip tight as I place it along the edge of that leopard vinyl. So you could see how helpful it was to epoxy first over that leopard vinyl strip before I did the gold is just going to give me a cleaner look and make everything look a little more finished and professional, I think, especially if you're not using textured vinyl. The chrome finished gold vinyl would be a lot trickier to hide those seams over the leopard vinyl. All right, so we're gonna repeat that stripe up at the top so that we've framed out that leopard print. And then I'm going to place my bee in the front and center of my tumbler. Now you'll notice on my finished product, I ended up adding the word queen underneath my bee. It was just kind of like a last minute idea that I had and I forgot to film that part. But anyway, so I'm just gonna place my decal like I normally would, and then after I get this on the tumbler, I'll show you guys how I assemble the vinyl work for the keychain. Got the vinyl work done on my tumbler, I'm going to move on to my keychain. We're going to be working on the glittered and epoxied side only for this tumbler. Normally I would apply the vinyl to the opposite side. However, because we put the painted base coat on this one, it's just going to be easier with this type of design to do it all on one side. I'm going to lay down the strip of leopard vinyl first, and I'm going to use my grid tape to help me line up the center of the blank as well as I can. And then I'm just going to smooth that out with my fingers to get all the bubbles out and get it nice and smooth. Then I moved on to my bee, again trying to use the grid on my transfer tape to help me center everything. And then once I get the bee on there, I will go ahead and lay my vinyl stripes like I normally would by using my craft knife to trim off the excess vinyl after it's been laid down. So you don't have to have like exact sizing for the width on these. You just kind of place as much as you need and then trim off the excess. The reason why I laid the vinyl lines with the leopard print in the same step on the keychain, unlike how I did the tumbler, is because I know I have a straight edge on the top and bottom of that vinyl strip since it was all laid down in one rather than with a wrap. So it was easy to just come up right next to it and get everything flat and happy. I forgot to sand my top rim before I did this decal work, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Normally I would have done my sanding before I put on that gold decal work, but it's okay. So we're just going to sand my top rim like I normally would. Because we did that quick glitter technique, I'm not worried about sanding the sides or the bottom rim because it's actually already smooth. So I'm just going to sand my top rim so that I can expose a fine line of stainless steel up around the top. And that fine line of stainless steel is where our final coats of epoxy will adhere to create the seal on the outer rim rather than the upper rim where it's more vulnerable. So after I get this sanded up, rather than rinse it at the sink today, I'm just going to wipe it up with some paper towels and some rubbing alcohol and make sure I got all that sand grit off as much as I can. Again, normally I would have done this before decals and rinsed it off at the sink, but I forgot today. So anyway, once we get all of our sanding done and we get everything cleaned up, I went over the whole cup with some tack cloth just to remove any excess or like debris or lint, and we were ready for our final coats of epoxy. All right, so I've got 20 milliliters of epoxy already mixed here, and that's going to be enough to coat both my tumbler and my keychain because we do have to put a little layer of epoxy over that vinyl work that we did on that keychain. And I'm just going to spread this on like I normally would to coat my tumbler, and then to coat my keychain, I use the same method that I used earlier in the video when we applied the glitter and epoxy mixture. So you just take your little metal stir stick on the flat side and use that to spread epoxy over your acrylic blank, much like you would frost a cookie with frosting. All right, and then once I've got the epoxy onto my keychain, I'm going to lay it on a flat surface to dry. and I'm going to allow my tumbler to dry as well. Now on this layer I did use just regular epoxy, so we're going to be waiting a full 8 to 12 hours before everything's dry. And of course you want to wait a full 72 hours before you send this stuff out to make sure that it's fully cured and everything else. I also want to show you guys how I completed the hardware for the keychain. I just did a simple hardware setup on this one. I just peeled off that protective sheet off the back and then put on my hardware. This is some gold hardware that I got from AliExpress. I will try to link it down below, but it's a little tricky to link stuff that I buy on AliExpress, and it takes a really long time for these to get over here. I think it took like about 4 to 6 weeks for me to get these keychains, but you can find similar ones on Amazon, which I will link for you guys as well. So we're just using the jump ring that came with all of these keychain blanks, and I slide it open side to side rather than opening it up the wider way, if that makes sense, and then put it through our hole and connect our keychain hardware. And voila, we got a super cute keychain. I love this set. I want to keep it for myself. It turned out exactly how I had envisioned it. So if you guys like this video, please be sure to give us a big thumbs up. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and please subscribe to our channel. We do upload every Wednesday and Saturday. Thank you so much for watching my video, and we'll see you soon. And a big thank you to all of our Flynn Sisters exclusive members. Thank you for your pledge. Your support means the world to our channel. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.